Hey, I don't have makeup on right now. I'm looking kind of like a wreck, but this is a really candid video, and I wanted to talk about therapy for those of you who have children who might need therapy. You're thinking about therapy. You're not sure if you really want to do therapy. I hope this video helps. This is me being very genuine and honest. Some years ago, I noticed behavior in a child one of our children who seemed to need help because as a new mom, we really don't know what we're doing. We wish there was a parent handbook and there isn't. And I had nothing to compare it to because if it's your first child, that's all you know. So you don't know if it's like behavior that's a little off or if that's totally normal. And it was very hard to differentiate that. But I remember going to the pediatrician and there was like surveys that I'd filled out just to make sure that we were where we should be. And on one of the surveys, it showed that he might need therapy because he was showing signs of needing some assistance with some things. And I remember feeling like, okay, therapy? Like, I grew up without needing any kind of therapy. And so I feel like there was like a stigma in my mind about therapy because I didn't know the benefits of it. And it's just one of those trigger words where you're like, my kid's perfect. Like, we don't need therapy. We're fine. We're good. Everything's good. Everything's fine. Like, that's the kind of reaction that was instantaneous in my head. And it was very, very difficult for me to accept that, my child needs some help. But at the same time, like a good mom will fight for her child and will make sure the child gets resources that they need. So inwardly, I was like, okay, I'm a good mom, so I'm going to get my child what he or she needs. But at the same time, like knowing that answer might be therapy is hard because in your head, you think, okay, if someone needs therapy, something's wrong with them. They need help. And if they need help, then they're not thriving. They're not being successful. And then it's looked down upon in a sense. So, and it shouldn't be, but it is. And our society views therapy as like something like, oh, you need therapy? What's wrong with you kind of thing. And I have to change that because throughout the years, we've had therapy, various kinds, with a couple of our children, and it's been so life-changing in the sense that our child is now so much better off. Old behaviors have like disappeared, and I don't know how to use those right word. Like, I don't want to offend anyone, but like, there are some things that can be fixed. Like, bad behaviors can like not even be an issue anymore. So it's not like you're fixing your child in a sense, but in a sense, I don't know what other word like really describes what I mean. So don't mean to offend anyone. So I'm just being like really honest. Like, there was, like in the Bible, there's this phrase, it's like wailing and gnashing of teeth. There were times when these fits, these emotional outbursts were like our child would like throw themselves to the floor. And obviously there's age appropriateness in that. Like, a little kid's going to do that versus a kid that's like a couple years older, right? A few years older. But even with him being the age that he was, I knew something was off somewhere. Like, it didn't seem to be the normal kind of tantrum. A normal kid doesn't fling themselves at a wall and want to hit their head. Like, it was a hazard, like a health hazard to the child, right? And so I was just like, throw yourself to the floor, but let's hit your head on the wall. Like, we've got some issues. And so I felt like it was a health hazard for my child. And that's when I'm like, hey, we need some help here. And the wailing and gnashing of teeth, that's what it felt like in the moment. I'm just like, okay, we can get in a tantrum or two a day, but like, this can't be going on like 15 times a day. Like, that seems off. And it was very frustrating. I mean, I was a stay-at-home mom, so that was like my focus. I wasn't like a career woman at that time. And it was just like all day, every day is what it felt like, dealing with tantrums. And yes, tantrums are part of parenting. You're going to experience a million. But when it's like all day long repeatedly, you're like, okay, there has to be some break in here somewhere. Like, this can't be normal. And it was very frustrating. So I'm like, okay, we do need therapy. And it took me about a month, a good solid month, for me to get over that mental hoop, that mental stigma that I had, and what are grandparents going to think, what are neighbors going to think, what are friends going to think. Like, then that doesn't matter. But that's what went through my head. Like, what are people going to think if they find out that my kid needs therapy? That means I've done something wrong as a parent. And don't beat yourself up. Like, there are genetic things that happen that you have no control over. You're still a good parent. You still feed them, you still clothe them, you still give them many baths a week. Sometimes genetics just does like junk, just does like whatever it wants to. And like, you have to roll the punches. Like, you have a genetic set, your husband's got a genetic set, and your child just gets a certain genetic set, and let's hope it's, great. But like, you just can't help some stuff, and it's not your fault. It is not like you did something and that's why your child has some issues that have to be worked through. So don't feel like it's your fault. And that is the biggest thing that I had to jump through, because I was just putting myself through the ringer. Like, did I eat something that caused this during pregnancy? Like, I was just like racking my brain, and it was like an emotional roller coaster for me. And so once I accepted the fact that, my child needed therapy, that it was going to be in their best interest, I feel like things went really smoothly. And we ended up doing early childhood intervention, or early intervention. I think that's what it's called. I'm like remembering years later. Early intervention. And your pediatrician will have the number to like where to call to get help. But this is where therapists will come to your home, and depending on if your child needs 1 therapy or 3, I mean, each type of therapy will have its own individual person that will come out to your house. So you don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to go to an office and worry about like 20 meetings a week. Like, they come to you, and it's once a week usually. And actually, that does vary by child, because my child needed it once a week. Sometimes it's like once every 2 weeks, depending on what symptoms your kid has. So with mine, it was once a week. So we had speech, we had developmental therapy, we had occupational therapy. Speech therapy is obviously related to if your kid is showing that they're behind in saying words. Developmental kind of covers like overall milestones. Like, is your child able to, like, are we delayed in like walking, or can we balance? Like, okay, like there's various facets within developmental therapy, and I'm just mentioning like the one thing that I distinctly remember with like making sure we could like do basic things like gripping things. Like, if you have like a little string, for example, and can you put toys on that string? Like, the toys have holes, like, can you put them on? And kind of basic gross motor skills, fine motor skills, kind of encompasses all that. Fine are like hand related, gross are like overall body stuff, like can you hop on 1 foot kind of thing. Going up and down stairs. I mean, there's so many facets, so I won't go too deep into it. You'll have to look it up. But with occupational therapy, it was more like, what I remember is really like tension related. So for example, like some kids are like overstimulated and they don't know what to do with their body. And a lot of times they'd like squeeze the body, kind of like push the head a little bit. They'd like, so if you have your elbow in your hand, and they're like push against the hand, and also at the same time push against the elbow, so you're compressing them just to get that input that your child may need. And that was a huge help. So even like throughout the day, and even especially at night for a period of time, I had to like push the shoulders down and push from knee to foot. You could do that. Also hand to elbow. And that really was a game changer. That one thing alone really, really helped. But therapy in general helped so much. Like, where my child did like a total 180. And I remember praying so hard, like when he was little, him being totally asleep, right? He had fallen asleep. There were many times I was at his bedside and just saying a prayer and asking God that he could behave normally. If I had done anything that I didn't know about, like did I feed him the wrong foods, like I put myself through the reamer. But
I prayed that he would be able to just be a regular functioning child. That's all I wanted. And that was so hard. That was so hard. And I feel like God answered my prayers. And obviously there's reasons that things happen, and there's trials that we each face. And sometimes we get the resolutions we want, and sometimes we don't. And that's kind of how it ends up being. Sorry, my nose. And I feel like God answered my prayers. And the salt, I don't, maybe check in the table or in the cabinet. And it was really life-changing, the therapy. I feel like we would not be in the same place if we hadn't had therapy. And it was hard just admitting that we needed therapy, we needed the help. But really what it ends up being for the child is it acts very much like playtime in a sense. A lot of therapists will bring toys, and whether that be the school bus, and they'll open the door and be like, door open, door closing, like just basic things where in that play space they learn words, so your speech develops. And it's like, I wish I would have known about it sooner, of course, but I do remember that the early intervention went to age 3. And so we joined at 19 months for one of my children. And I did have another son who also went through therapy, less therapy, as in not as many different types of therapy. I think he only had one type of therapy, but the first one had like 3 different types. And I just feel like our lives are changed because therapy helped immensely with making my child normal. And I hate to say it like in that way, but that's what I feel like. I feel like he can function now, and he's not as just, I don't even know, like there's hardly any words. I mean, it's like a different child entirely. And I just wish that every parent knew that early intervention existed. Early intervention is in all 50 states, and it really helps children who need therapy. And it's been a blessing in my life. And if you are on the fence about it, it's time to just do it and to be that parent that gives your child what they need to succeed. As they age, it's harder and harder to pick up stuff and to learn things. I mean, a child can learn so fast. Their brains are like a sponge. And the longer we wait for therapy, the behaviors that we don't want the child to do are more cemented in to your child. And so that was really huge for me to know that. So we got a good 1.5 years of therapy before he aged out of that program. And if you wait too late, things might be more permanent. And that is the whole point of this, that it's so important to get your child in before it's too late. And obviously, I mean, even as they get past 3, they can still have access to therapy in their elementary school for like 30 minutes a week or something. But sometimes it's not very personalized. Like they might have, for example, speech, but they're in there with like 2 other kids. So it's not like one-on-one. And the one-on-one therapy is priceless. It is totally priceless. And it's not expensive. Like with early intervention, it's based on your salary. So you could still make $200,000 a year, and you still have to pay like a small percentage of like what you overall make. And then but you can also make nothing, and then it's like free pretty much. But like for us, what were we making at the time? I don't know if it was like, I think it was like 60 something potentially, or 70 something thousand per year. And so our fee was like $10 per appointment, like, or no, I think it was per month, $10 per month. So we'd have 4 visits, but it'd be like $10 per month, which is like nothing. That's not even paying the person, the therapist who's coming for that whole like appointment. So it's a still a deal. And obviously tax dollars you pay for this amazing program, which I'm really grateful for because we've benefited from this program in the sense that our children their lives are affected for the better because of it. So I'm grateful for it. But there are times where you just have to swallow the difficultness of knowing that we need a little bit of extra help, but the help is so worth it. And so no matter how poor you are, no matter how rich you are, the fee is so tiny and minuscule for your child to get like help for the whole month, that it is the best deal on this planet. I kid you not. But I just wanted to share the story with you in hopes that it affects some other families out there that are getting through that hard process of accepting therapy. And I know that your lives will be benefited from it. And you learn so much as a parent. Like you were there right there in the living room with them. So as the therapist comes in, they play with your child and you see everything. You make sure your child's fine, and you just kind of stand back and let, the magic happen there with the therapy and the playtime and see your child grow. And it's really neat to witness the growth of your child. All the best to those of you who are going through this therapy process with your child or children, as some families have it, and best of luck.